So this is the saxophone, the final instrument we will have a mini lesson profile on for the woodwind family. As you can see, this is slightly different than the clarinet and even more slightly different than the flute, but they are all still part of the woodwind family because all of the key mechanisms down the sides, all those fancy keys and those holes that we have to cover and open to create different pitches that match on the musical alphabet and on the staff. Because I have to blow air into or across a mouthpiece, and because it is basically that cone shape. Now, we have a curve in the bottom to give it this bell form. And also the saxophone is made of brass, just like the brass instruments, but everything else about it classifies it as a woodwind. Just like the clarinet, we have that single piece of wood attached to the mouthpiece with something called a ligature. And when I cover my bottom teeth, and I lie down with my cup, and then bring my lips all around everything, and blow air, it will make a sound. Or I can make it go high. Now, we can take those same 5 notes that we have done on the clarinet and the flute, C, D, E, F, and G, and we can play up and down, just like we did with the other ones. So the saxophone was actually invented by Alto Sax, that's where it got its name, because he wanted an instrument that more closely resembled the human voice. So the range of the alto saxophone is in the same range as the human voice, basically. It is a beautiful tone, and it also has 4 different instruments in its own little family. So we have the soprano saxophone that's about the same size as the clarinet, and it is straight down. No crook in the neck. It's just a straight brass-colored saxophone instrument with still the same key mechanisms and still a much smaller mouthpiece and reed. And then we have the alto sax, which is the main instrument that we will have in our concert bands. Then we have a tenor sax. Now the tenor sax is 1 step bigger than the alto. It has a little bit of a bend in the neck, and it has a much larger bell. And then finally, the Bari Sax, which was actually what I played when I was in jazz band. Can you imagine 5'4" Mrs. Reader with an instrument that stood up to here on me? It was large, but it was so much fun. I really enjoyed playing that. So the Bari Sax has a whole other coil right here at the top in the neck. Much larger mouthpiece. The reed is about this wide and about this tall. It's a large reed. And then there is a whole other round on the bell part too. Very, very large. My hands were spread, pretty wide apart. The keys are very widely set. And of course, because it's a much larger instrument, it has a much lower sound. This is the lowest I can play on this instrument. And the highest I can play with a good sound is going to be a high, high C above the staff. The instrument can go higher, but not this particular model. So here's me playing up to the high C. I am really excited to introduce my special guest, Nathan Sluttin, and he'll do a little bit of intro on himself as well, but I would just like to add that Nathan and I grew up together, and Nathan's a year younger than me, but we went to the same high school, and he now has the privilege and honor of being the band director where he and I first got our starts as musicians. So that's a really special relationship that we have with each other and that we have with our musical community, coming back to our alma maters or coming back to our areas and being able to give back to the students where we first were given the gift of music. It's pretty special. And Nathan is dynamic and he's amazing and he does some really awesome things. And one of those awesome things he does is play a super amazing, awesome saxophone. And remember that big Bari Sax I said I got to play? He also played that too in the jazz band and marching bands and whatnot with me. But he also played alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone. He really mastered them all. So I'm excited for him to share a little bit of his knowledge and talent with you all as part of this mini lesson on the saxophone.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Sletten, and I'm from Lake Mills. I'm actually the band director in Lake Mills, Iowa. I get to teach 7th through 12th grade band. and I absolutely love it. And I'm so thankful that Mrs. Reeder asked me to give you a video here today. I'm a saxophone player, and then I'm also going to provide you a video about, I'm also a guitar player, and I play some other stringed instruments like banjo and mandolin and things like that. So I'll show you that in just a second. But first I wanted to talk about the saxophone. So this happens to be an alto saxophone. There are kind of some different sized instruments. So we have alto saxophone that's like this, a soprano saxophone that's just a little bit smaller. You have a tenor saxophone, which is bigger than this, and then you have a Bari Sax. And so there's all sorts of different types of saxophones that you can play. Saxophone is from the woodwind instrument, and the reason it is because if you see right here, there's this little piece of wood we call the reed. And what you have to do is when you put that in your mouth, you blow air through this mouthpiece, and the reed will vibrate or shake really fast, and then that's what produces the sound. So you get sort of a sound like this. And then what you have is you have all of these buttons, these keys we call them, okay, and your fingers go on those keys, and you've got keys off to the side and keys on. And actually, one of the questions that Mrs. Reeder asked me to say is, why did I choose this instrument? And one of the reasons is just because I thought it looked so cool. It's got all these buttons, and I just wanted to be able to learn how to do all those buttons. And be able to make music pushing those down and stuff. And so that's one of the reasons why I chose the instrument. But then another reason that I chose the instrument is because when my band director was testing me out, he realized that I had a really good, what we call mouth shape or embouchure. And that's our mouth shape that we have. And I could really produce a really good sound on the saxophone. And actually, when I went into that instrument testing, I didn't know that I was going to be a saxophone player. I tried all the instruments out. And my band director told me that I was really going to be suited towards a saxophone. And so that's why my parents ended up getting me a saxophone, and I've played it ever since. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason why I love playing the saxophone is because you can play so many different styles with the saxophone. And I'll give you just a little bit of an example. So you can play like more classical music. So here's an example of this. Is really fast. This is a piece that's called Ligature, which means that it's about like a wasp or a bee. Okay, see if you can hear that in the sound. You can kind of hear how fast it's going, and it kind of reminds you of like a bee or a wasp. And so there's like really fast music you can do like that. You can also play really popular music that you might know from movies, like this is from with the Wizard of Oz called Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And this is going to be a slower piece of music. So maybe you've heard that song before. And you hear how I added a little bit of a shake to the sound. I just thought, when I heard that, it melted my heart, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to play like that. You can also play what we call jazz. Jazz is an awesome American style of music, and jazz, there are a lot of jazz saxophone players. So here's an example of that style of music. I just love playing jazz on the saxophone. It's really fun. Some of the other questions that Mrs. Reeder asked me to talk about is what has been challenging about learning the saxophone. I think, just playing an instrument is something that isn't just instant gratification. It's not something that you can just do right away. And so one of the things that's challenging about learning an instrument is you keep learning different fingerings and you keep learning different notes. But then as you practice and you have lots of repetition, you do things over and over and over, you get so much better at it. And so that's been really fun. What has been rewarding? I have been able to play the saxophone in 5th grade band, 6th grade band, middle school band, high school band, and then I went on and I got a scholarship to college, and I got to play in the Augustana College band. I've been able to play in a lot of professional bands, jazz bands, and things like that. I've even been able to play with some really famous jazz musicians. And so just being able to play music with other people and really make people smile and happy while I play the saxophone, that has just been one of the most rewarding things. I even got to play the saxophone in China. I got to tour China for 2.5 weeks with the Augustana band. Talk about rewarding. That is so much fun. And what do I love about band and playing instruments? There is nothing better than the connection that you can have with people and friends, and you meet so many people playing in band. And it just gives you this great sense of pride, and you get really proud of all the hard work that you're putting in. And so I really encourage you to reach out and to Mrs. Reeder and talk to her about which instruments that you're excited to try out. And you're just going to have such an awesome future making music with so many awesome people. And you get to go to some great places to do it too if you choose. So thank you so much for listening to me. Again, this is the saxophone, and it's a really fun instrument to play. And yeah, I'll play you out, okay? Have a great day.
Go ahead. Hi, Madelyn. How are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Good. So I'm here with Miss Madelyn, and she is a 6th grader at BPES, and she plays the saxophone. Madelyn, can you tell us why you chose the saxophone as your instrument?
Because when we were like in 4th grade and we tried all the instruments, I thought the saxophone like made the coolest sound, and I could actually like play it, you know.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard from a lot of people is like the instruments they ended up picking were the instruments that they got a clear, nice sound on from the start. So that's interesting. Were there any other instruments that you liked or wished you could have played?
My other option was the clarinet or possibly the oboe, but then we didn't play that in like till 7th grade maybe. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, oboe is one of those ones that like we don't usually start out. We like to start on other instruments first. That's interesting you bring that up because I'm not going to do a mini lesson on the oboe, but that's a really cool, unique instrument too. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. What do you find challenging about learning the saxophone?
First year I started, note fingering for sure was hard for me.
Because there's a lot of buttons, isn't there?
Mhm.
But once you kind of learn the basic patterns, it really fell into place. Yeah. So what's super rewarding about playing the saxophone? What's something you love about it?
It really like feels good when I finally like accomplished a song and I can play it right, you know?
Yeah, that does. Isn't that a great feeling when you work really hard on something and then you achieve that goal? That is something I really actually admire about you, Madelyn, is you have this really cool inside desire to try new things and to get really good at the things you try. I love how you set those goals and achieve them.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. So tell me a little bit about what you love most about being in band and what makes band fun for you.
Probably all the people, because like it's really fun to like hang out before band and like during concerts and like during group band and stuff. That's fun.
You get to be with your friends, right? And then when you get older, you get to be with larger groups of people that aren't necessarily in your grade. Yeah, that's agreed. That's one of my favorite memories of band is the relationships and the friendships I made by being in a musical group. Awesome. So again, this was 6th grader Madelyn. She plays the saxophone. She's a rockin' saxophone player. And I am really appreciative of you giving me this time. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.